Yesterday, I mentioned how some narratives out there are simply not true and are hurting NIO and the company and the stock. And one of them I'd like to address today, which is that NIO is too expensive. So, first of all, regarding the Chinese sales of NIO, people are saying, well, the company disappointed because they did not sell many cars, and that's the main reason why the stock is down. And I talked about how, yes, there has been some troubles and issues with how the CFO guided for 250,000 and then how they only delivered 160,000. But I was always stressing on this channel that I do think that this is still a very good performance, given the fact that NIO is taking up 40% and more of the pure electric vehicle market in China. So not hybrids, not plug-in hybrids, not extended range vehicles and so on. Pure electric vehicles in the price category of 400,000 RMB plus. This is where NIO takes up a really big lead in market share and basically even outselling Tesla, if you will. So this is a big statement in my point of view. They are doing really well, given the fact that they are really competing with the Germans here, BMW, Audi and Mercedes. And so I'm not buying into this narrative that NIO is, not performing well. In fact, I think given the macroeconomics and also the other headwinds that they are facing, they have achieved quite a lot, and we should be happy about that and acknowledge it. And now this is also leading sometimes into the discussions revolving around the fact that NIO's cars are too expensive, and that's why they have lackluster performance. No, NIO is simply competing in a different price segment, and as I mentioned, they're doing quite well within that segment. And now they're going to enter other segments which are faster growing, which also have lots of competition surely, but just in the lower price segments there is simply more growth currently, and there is also the larger addressable market. Now, I want to talk about the Q6 Etron, so that's an Audi car, versus NIO ES6 as an example, how I think that NIO is also not too expensive here in Germany. I had the pleasure to be test driving the ES6 lately, so as always I'm taking it on the road trip from Germany down to Italy, because that's one of the most famous routes that every German usually travels within the summer days. So that's kind of the real world test to take for an EV, whether or not you can go such long distances and how a electric vehicle is performing in that regard. And I'll make a separate video on a bit of the insights onto the ES6 in general, and how it's also comparing to the other NIOs that I've tested so far, the ET5 and the ET7, which I had for many weeks and months. And so, generally, I can attest that the ES6 is actually a really good car. I was very satisfied with its performance going to Italy and back. And generally, I would say it's really premium class from what you can compare to a car like an Audi now. So I think there are no question marks around the product quality on the NIO cars, but you would usually argue that, well, this is a Chinese car, so definitely they need to compete, and people think they need to compete on price. Now, we have actually a new Audi just launched, the Q6 Etron, and that one is a refresh. So Audi has done some improvements, for example, new displays in the interior, also some upgrades to the software, and it's generally the freshest Audi e-tron that you can get currently. And now let's see how this compares to a NIO in Germany. So the first starting version here, the Q6 e-tron Quattro, you can get starting from 75,000 euros, and that one is having, for example, an acceleration of around 6 seconds. It's having a around about 100 kilowatt hour battery pack. So we could say that this is a similar class than the ES6, also from the dimensions, from the kind of premium to luxury level that you're getting. But if we look a little bit more into the specs of the cars, you would say that actually, given the fact that this is a slower vehicle here, for example, the NIO ES6 is actually accelerating faster, then you would have actually to buy into the Q6 Etron Quattro in order to level up with the performance of the NIO. And that's just on the data sheet here, right? There is much more to a car, obviously, but you see that very quickly you get into a price segment here of above 90,000 euros for an Audi that is comparing to the same level of the NIO ES6 in Germany. And of course, NIO has always also this advantage that you can also, get BAS. So not only could you get the NIO for 75,000 euros, very equal to the e-tron Quattro here, with buying the battery, the big pack, because you can also get, of course, the smaller size, the 75 kilowatt hour battery pack. But let's say we compete on equal battery packs here, 100 kilowatt hours. Then you get it for a similar price. But of course, with BAS, you also can just lease the battery and then you will get it even cheaper, starting at 55,000 euros more or less. So you can see that this car is actually very competitively priced and should therefore attract lots of buyers. But that's currently not the case. And that's where I think NIO is currently lacking a couple of things in Germany, which is, first of all, I think they are selling without their main selling propositions, which is, number one, there are not enough battery swap stations. And so this whole BAS scheme and also battery swapping advantages against supercharging are not really a USP that customers are currently experiencing and where sales staff can really pitch it to consumer. We've now caught up to 14 battery swap stations in Germany, but on my trips to Italy, I can't really use one. The one in Ulm is too far off the route if I'm going south. If I go to Berlin from southern Germany, there is almost no battery swap station in between that is on the way to Berlin. So basically, that the infrastructure build out is still a failure and a weak point of NIO currently. And I suggested in past videos that I think a better strategy would have been to start building out the battery swap stations even before launching the brand in Europe, if you were to be serious about selling with your USPs. Another one, and that's from my personal experience of subscribing to many NIO cars and being just as any regular customer of a NIO in Germany, there is an issue with the sales staff, the fellows, how they are called. There is usually not a lot of organization around that. There are people who are taking very long time to respond. As a buyer, I don't feel really valued, to be honest. There's not a high service level. People are slow to respond to questions. Sometimes I have more knowledge than the actual fellow. There is a mix of communication ways between WhatsApp, telephone, email, and NIO app. It's not straightforward. Even on the NIO houses, sometimes the situation is not really clear and direct. And so I just had the impression that this whole fellow and sales organization is not ramped up in Germany yet. If I compare it, for example, to when I signed up for Tesla to test drive the Model 3 Highland, I experienced a very well organized Tesla in Germany that is calling me back frequently. They're organizing well. There are processes in place that are really fluent and without much problems within this customer journey. Very much in contrast to what I've experienced with NIO, unfortunately. And that means NIO is trying to sell a superior priced product with better specs, a better product in general. Like they have better hardware, better software, definitely. They have got an AI assistant and so on. So each of that would be a no-brainer if you're comparing it even to the latest Audi Q6 e-tron here. In my opinion, well, you might have brand preferences towards Audi, possibly, and Audi definitely has this advantage here that they are the more well-known brand, and some feelings attached to that. NIO doesn't have that. They don't have the awareness. They have the uncertainty around Chinese brand and so on. That's definitely the case. But if you're just really straight onto the data and the fact sheets, including the price, then I would say actually NIO has a very good offering here, but they're selling without the two main value propositions, which are better service and are battery swap station and better charging infrastructure. So that's gonna be obviously a weak point for NIO and a difficult thing to overcome in this scenario. And so therefore I think that's part of why we see slower sales number, which then only fuel the narrative that NIO is not selling well because they are too expensive. Believe me, I think that's not the case. NIO is not too expensive. I think they are priced where they should be in terms of the value that they deliver on the product, but unfortunately not yet on the ecosystem. And that's really an issue in my point of view. I always tell you, like, you don't have to look at the European numbers too much at this current point in time. But people using those weak numbers in order to fuel these narratives, and that's where the issue comes for NIO, because this could actually also ultimately deteriorate the brand in the first place. And so, I'm hoping that now with the consolidation of the European operations, in which they have fired a couple of double positions, where they are restructuring who has got some responsibilities, I'm hoping that they are addressing these issues. And the number one issue to address should be their fellow system, in my point of view, which is currently not working, despite the fact that the people are really nice and, they are... I'm happy to interact with them. It's not a people's problem, but it's a problem of how they are trained and how the operations are set up. Currently, it's a mess, and that's, I think, is costing NIO customers. Thanks for watching, and see you in my next videos.